Hello, welcome to another episode of Just My Thoughts here on Sparks 1524. I'm Nathaniel Miller. Last year I dealt with the outrage about the so-called, don't say gay bill here in Florida. In reality, the Parental Rights in Education bill simply says that no gender identity activist has any right, permission, authority, or access to frankly, grooming children by trying to convince 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds that they actually have the wrong genitalia and need to go on life-changing hormones and have surgery, perhaps, to be what the gender activist thinks they are. One of my examples, well, not my examples, but one of my points was, even as a gay man, yes, I'm gay, I like dudes. If I find a partner and we adopt, I damn well don't want some gender identity activist telling my kid who or what they're supposed to be any more than I would want a conservative Christian, a conservative Muslim telling that kid their parents are evil for being gay. That's all up to me as a parent. And I can actually say this from a point of knowing because I was a step-parent for a very long time. I was married. My ex-wife knew I was gay. We thought we could make a mixed orientation marriage work. Obviously, it didn't work. And that was on both of us. But I had a stepdaughter who I'm still very fond of, and she's a remarkable young woman. It's been a privilege to watch her grow up. I would not, neither would my ex-wife, let anybody mess with her head because she was our kid. Well, now there is outrage over drag queen shows being banned supposedly in Tennessee and other states. Specifically, let's address Tennessee, okay? The Tennessee bill that's in question does not ban drag shows. What it does is ban drag shows in public where children can see them. The same way we do not permit strip shows and burlesque shows in public where children can see them. It's not appropriate. Let's knock a couple of arguments right off the table here, okay? So let's go with argument number one, that I suffer from internalized homophobia. If I suffered from internalized homophobia, I would not be writing a bunch of mystery novels where my main character is gay. I would not have written 3 novels specifically where one of the character arcs Isaac Shepard went through was dealing with gay bigotry. Now, that was a metaphor overall for bigotry in general, but specifically homophobia and how he overcomes it in his own life. I would not be advocating for gay people in civil society if I had internalized homophobia. So I'm knocking that one off the table. Now let's go to argument number 2. Yes, my generation grew up watching Bugs Bunny in drag. I watched Tootsie when I was a kid, Dustin Hoffman in drag. Sherlock Holmes used drag in Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. Yes, we have been entertained by men in drag and occasionally women in drag for centuries. Here's the difference. Bugs Bunny used drag as a disguise to befuddle Elmer Fudd and defeat him. None of us ever thought Bugs Bunny was in love with Elmer Fudd. None of us ever thought Bugs Bunny thought of himself as anything but a male bunny, as his relationship with Lola Bunny would later attest. None of us ever thought Bugs Bunny actually was in love with Elmer Fudd. We thought he loved messing with Elmer Fudd. And we didn't think Elmer Fudd was in love with Bugs Bunny. Elmer Fudd was besotted by this beautiful vision of a woman in front of him. It was a disguise Bugs Bunny used to gain a tactical and strategic advantage over his adversary. Dustin Hoffman used drag in Tootsie as a disguise for a tactical advantage in gaining employment. Oh, another great example, Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire is not an expression of Robin Williams' sexual identity or sexuality. Mrs. Doubtfire was a disguise he created so he could stay near his kids during a messy divorce. Same thing with Sherlock Holmes in A Game of Shadows. He dresses in drag, not because Sherlock Holmes is expressing sexuality and sexual identity. He did it because it was a disguise so he could get up close to some bad guys Moriarty was sending after Dr. and Mrs. Watson. So yes, we have been entertained by drag in the general public. But the reason that's not a problem is because that use of drag is a disguise. It's not an expression of sexual identity or sexuality. That's where the issue comes in with drag shows in front of kids, drag queen story hours. Drag queens are some of the most amazing performers I've ever seen. Bianca Del Rio, oh my God, I love watching Bianca Del Rio. She is acerbic, caustic, witty, actually very kind hearted, though she'll never admit it, and incredibly fabulous. Roy Haylock, who creates and performs Bianca Del Rio, is a master showman. I really think many drag queens are better actors than half the people in Hollywood because drag queens create an entire persona that changes. You almost don't recognize the performer behind the drag queen, if I can put it that way. However, these men and the occasional woman who does drag, a drag king per se, these characters that they're creating, these personas, are not disguises. They are an expression, an overt expression of that performer's sexuality and sexual identity. If a drag queen or even a drag king walks into Kroger or Safeway or whatever just to do their daily shopping, odds are most people aren't even going to know it's somebody in drag because these performers are so amazing at creating these personas. And if somebody does recognize it and has a problem with it, the person with the problem really as long as a person in drag is dressed appropriately for that venue and somebody has a problem with them being in drag, I don't have a problem with the person having a problem with them, unless the person having the problem makes life difficult for the drag queen. Like the rest of us, in civil society going about just daily business, drag queens and the occasional drag king have every right to dress in drag as long as it's appropriate for the venue. And odds are, again, because these performers are so incredible, kids won't even know that it's a man in a dress or whatever. That's a different thing than drag queens or drag kings trying to interact with little kids to convince kids that this is an acceptable way of life. I think it is for adults. But again, you are now trying to convince minor children of an issue dealing with sexuality and sexual identity. That is the purview of the parents. Another problem I have with this is how the proponents of this issue try to advocate for their side. They want to shut down debate. They don't want to debate. They don't want to have a conversation. They want to tell all of us, gay people who don't believe in this, straight parents, gay parents, anybody who doesn't believe that this is appropriate, that we're Nazis, that we're fascists, that we're communists, that we're dictators, that we're tyrants, that we're, fill in your despotic adjective here. There are very few gay people I see standing up on these issues. For one, we are a minority. If you can count, including bisexual people as well as straight gay people. That's a funny way to put it, but I'm straight gay. I'm just gay. I'm not bi. But we're about 7 to 9% of the population max. Those of us who are just gay, maybe 5%. We're a minority. Now, we're a consistent minority and a significant one because the population of gay people, of LGBT people, is about the same, 7 to 9% of the population always. But we're an extreme minority. And if gay people who don't agree with this kind of ideological despotism don't stand up, there will be a huge backlash because the last thing you want to do is anger parents. Look at what's happening around the country now with school boards trying to silence parents. The grassroots movement against all this is growing. And if we in the LGBT community don't stand up to defend the rights of parents, straight parents and gay parents, to be in control of their children's sexual identity education, it's going to backfire against us. We don't let minor children into R-rated movies if they're under 17 because they might be seeing violence, sexuality, language, situations they're not ready physically yet because of the development of the brain to handle. We don't let kids join the military before they're 18 for the same reason. We don't let people under 18 see strip shows because it's an overt display of sexuality. And that's not appropriate for children growing up until they're cognitively adults. Drag queen story hours, drag queen shows for children falls under this because as much as I love drag shows, and I love a good drag show, these performers, as I said, are amazing. These are inherent, the whole thing about drag is inherently based on sexuality and sexual identity, and that belongs solely to the parents. It also is inappropriate for anybody, gay or straight, to foist anything dealing with sexuality or sexual identity on children, especially minor children whose brains are not developed. They're in that process of growing. They don't have any ability to think through the issue. They just know what they're told. Once a child is old enough to think through the issue, different story. So I know that's a very unpopular thing to say, but I do urge other gay people, especially parents, stand up with our straight brothers and sisters, because this isn't a gay or straight issue. This is a parental issue. Gay parents out there, my fellow LGBT people, do you want straight ideological activists getting a hold of your kids at straight person story hour, straight person shows, to tell your kids that the only sexuality, the only sexual identity is straight? Freedom is a two-edged sword. I've said it many times. Freedom is a two-edged sword. If we want it, we have to defend it for everybody else. Otherwise, we will be left on the ash heap of history. And we have worked too hard as an LGBT community. We've worked way too hard, been through way too much just in the last 70 years to let that happen, because we allowed a minority of ideological activists to attack children. If you have thoughts, I would ask for you to put them in the comments. I will immediately delete any comment that advocates violence. And that advocating violence, to me, also includes a comment saying, you should get hit by a car, you should die, something like that. Even if the person isn't saying, I'm going to do this. If you make a comment about this issue, wishing physical harm, then one, I'll just delete it. I'm not even going to give you the time of day. But number two, that means you're the person, if you make that kind of comment, who is trying to shut down debate and take control over me. You can argue with me. Please do. I want to hear points. I want to hear counterpoints and ideas. But be polite. Be respectful. This is a civil society, not a dictatorship. And that's one of the things that I'm pushing back on. If you like this video, please feel free to share it. I would ask you to hit the little like button down below. It does help the algorithm. Again, feel free to share it. And I think I've got a lightning storm coming in. I'm getting some interference, so it's time to wrap this up. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for your time. Until we meet again, go and do great things.